Hey guys, what's up? And welcome back to another installment of GRP Ghost Recon Phantoms Open Discussion. Today we're going to be talking about the tricky issue of tactical inserts for armor. Armor is a tricky issue in this game because it's very, for the most part, subjective, whereas weapons tend to be more objective, more or less. I mean, there's nothing subjective about the statement. For example, the SVAL, Modmaster SV, both are objectively better weapons than the various F2000s out there. Modmaster, SC, whatever. The ASVAL is just a better weapon. It has better control, more accuracy, more damage, better fire rate, and so on. Better ammo reserves. That's just the way it is. Armor is a different story. Armor is a different animal. For one, you have the initial question: do I go light or heavy? And that's probably one we should tackle right off the bat. And then comes the question of tactical inserts. Let's first talk about light or heavy. Now, I do happen to have a lot of legendary armor, but the principle is the same. I only have ballistic for recon, so I run this when I'm the light tac suit, splinter cell, and you know it's just a matter of preference. I think overall I've had more success with the mobility of light armor. That's especially true of the ultralight stuff because the speed is just that much better. But then again, there's a sacrifice to be made. There are situations where you're in CQC where, you know, if you had just had a bit more armor protection or what have you, you might have, or armor percentage protection, that is, you might have survived the encounter, but then you might not be as fast. I mean, when you're respawning, you get to the point faster. I think overall most people prefer light armor. I would prefer it too, but I do sometimes run ballistic, i.e. heavy armor setups. I do that pretty often on my recon. If only because it allows, at least with the ballistic armor, it allows my recon to tank enemies like support and assault. And on smaller maps, that's pretty useful. If I'm doing, I tend to SMG much more than sniping. If I'm running, say, recon on Metro or maybe Roby tac, I'll definitely put on the light splinter cell tac suit. It looks cool and it gives me a speed edge that I think is important on those maps. Whereas Attica or Tom's got to be running ballistic, i.e. heavy. So I think overall mobility is more important than just taking damage. And I think that's true of all the classes. But, you know, that I do run heavier armors every now and then. Now, keep in mind, it's true that I have legendary armors, but everything I'm about to say or have said is applicable to the normal 5-slot armor sets that are available. There's nothing exclusive to, you know, ballistic or ultralight or whatever. But let's start with the normal. So we talked about what's better, light or heavy. I think personally mobility is better. It's more important than a little bit more armor. Sometimes it allows you to escape encounters, and sometimes it just lets you get to the point faster, whether to cap or just participate. You never know when that speed will come in handy. But there's that trade-off on a final note. Sometimes in CQC you can lose out, whereas if you had more armor protection, percentage protection, you might have survived. You might have won out that one. You might have won that one battle. But everything's a trade-off, and it's especially true of the inserts for armor, which we're going to talk about right now. Inserts for armor. Let me just first go through the stats. So you have damage mitigation, anti-crit, max health, regen. Damage mitigation is probably the least important of any of it. It is a separate stat from armor percentage, but it's not really that important. It can help, but I don't think it's that important. This is just a coincidence that I have a lot of max health inserts plugged in here, but I could easily go without it and I'd be fine. Anti-crit. Anti-crit is pretty important. I used to completely neglect anti-crit, but eventually I got tired of getting elbow shot to death by snipers, you know, as in getting a crit shot for 270 in the fucking elbow. It's pretty annoying, to say the least, or even for 180. And at the higher levels, you know, General 5, 4 or 5, etc., most players have extremely high crit chances, with their weapons. You know, SMGs have a 20 flat 22%, LMGs 27, assault rifles 28, and so on and so forth. Snipers 27 when they're maxed out. And so high-level players are going to have a pretty good shot at, well, getting you shot, basically, with a crit shot. It's too risky, I think, to not go with any anti-crit whatsoever. But everything's a trade-off. With 10% really probably isn't enough, because I still get crit shots sometimes, although the frequency ever since using anti-crit at 10% has decreased. But I still get crit shot. Better would be 15, better would be 20. But when you do that, you have to trade off other things. You have to lose out on other things, other tactical inserts for your armor that might be beneficial. Which leads me to the next point, max health. I think max health obviously is probably, in my opinion, and should be the most important thing out there. Having a good health stat is a pretty good thing, and you know, it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, max health, why you need that. It's good. Health is good. Regen is subtle, but I think it's the second most important attribute in the game. I don't have a lot for my Recon, but Recons can kind of get away without too much. Hopefully, if you're playing Recon right, you're not in the thick of it. You're not getting shot up all the time. But for other classes, like I said, everything that I'm talking about applies to the normal inserts as well. So if I point to ballistic, it's, you know, yeah, it has 6 slots, but that's irrelevant to the discussion because it's the same principle. You know, you won't be able to pack in quite as much because you're missing a slot, but still. So on the flip side, say for the ballistic suit, I have to find a balance. I don't have any damage mitt. I have a decent health stat. I mean, it could be better. It could go all the way up to 165 or even further. Got my 10%, but I have a pretty high health regen, 4.6. And my reasoning is basically that assault is the class that's mostly in the thick of it. They're mostly at the front, and if they're hit, they can't afford to be down for too long. And you know, because you never know, enemies around the corner, enemies running towards you. It helps to have that high regen. I've run regen as high as 5 point something, but then you miss out even more on health, and you just have to find that balance. Everything's a trade-off. This is probably not enough anti-crit, but it's got to do. I'd like to have, you know, 5, 6, 7, even 10 more hit points for max health, but then I got to sacrifice health regen. Now, as many of you know, and I'm going to talk about the specific inserts now, in the shop, tac suit upgrades, there used to be different kinds of normal inserts, each with different effects, even though there's a primary effect, say anti-crit, or max health, or regen, or damage mitt, with secondary effects. There were a total of 3 effects. And those of you know, the massive inserts only affect one thing. It's just one thing: 10 health, 10 anti-crit, 1 regen, and 1 damage mitt, 1.8 damage mitt. They're not really worth it using on their own. In fact, the old ones were better. And if you want to use some of the old ones, unfortunately, they're only available via the Athena Armour, which you can see here. And even those are in limited format, right? You have only this kind of max health, and this kind of health regen, this kind of anti-crit, and this kind of damage mitt, and so on and so forth. Not really the best, but whatever. If you want to access the old ones, you need Athena. But what I found pretty useful, switch to the ballistic for now, is mixing and matching. Yes, it's absolutely true. A lot of the tactical inserts, the massives, are just useless on their own. But here I'm even using the setup, and I have 4 of them. I have 3 massive health regens, which I think is important for the regen rate of the assault. And I'm using 2 anti-crits, which have the properties of some health as well as some minimal health regen. And overall, I have a pretty good setup this way. Mixing and matching can be pretty useful. Let's look at the light suit. Yeah, I did a little mixing and matching here too. 1 max health, 2 anti-crit, massive health, and of course, obviously, since I only have 4 slots in ultra light, you know, the regen, the health, and everything is less. 3, it's 1.7 less than my rate for the ballistic, but you know, those are the trade-offs. There's always a trade-off. Obviously, I can't take as much punishment with ultralight as I can with ballistic for obvious reasons. Not just because of the raw armor percentage of 15% versus 28%. And support is not too dissimilar to assault. A little less regen, but you are kind of in the thick of it. Support unfortunately does tend to cap a lot, but what you get is I have a massive health. I got one anti-crit. I got an anti-crit, one max health, and I have two massive regens, and that helps a lot. And once again, 10%. But at the end of the day, it really does come down to preference. I've had matches where I just feel as if running light tack suits and with certain inserts just work better versus ballistic and vice versa. I played both. I do have the overall preference for light tack suits. That's absolutely true. But there are instances if if you have to do a hard camp that say ballistic will definitely be better. I explain my reasoning with the Recon. I'll take light if it's a large map where I have to be really mobile. With an SMG, you have to be mobile because you don't really have the range that, say, assault rifles or LMGs have. And yeah, I mean, this is pretty much it. It's a matter of preference. There are people who totally disregard anti-crit. I used to do that too. There are people who totally disregard anti-crit. There are people who don't have any regard for health regen. I mean, I've seen setups playing against them where 180 health, 190 health on a solid, everything else is disregarded. Even that has its advantages, of course, because it means you'll be able to take a lot of punishment. You won't be able to regen any of it if you survive, but so it really comes down to preference. But if I were to say something that's somewhat axiomatic, and of course with this there's no such thing as saying this is axiomatic, but for the sake of argument, look for a good balance of everything. But bear in mind that in looking for that balance, the most important attributes are definitely max health and health regen. I think this is more than just opinion. This is just kind of how things play out in the actual game. Anti-crit, very important if you don't want those stupid elbow shots killing you. Damage mitt, I think, up to you. Do whatever you want with damage mitt. It can make you tougher, but find that balance. And each one plays differently. I mean, I put the most regen into assault because he's the most at the front line. Somewhere in between with regen for support, and the least regen for recons because they're sneaky and they're there to clean up. They're staying in the back. Ideally, if you're playing recon right, you're staying in the back. You're letting them the assault do most of the pushing with support somewhere in between, and you're cleaning up. So regen's least important, but still, I have a decent regen rate for my recon, and that's the way it should be, I think. So I hope that more or less covered tactical inserts for armor. It's a complex issue because there's no easy answer, and it's trial and error. And believe it or not, I'm still experimenting. I have not come to the ultimate setup for myself, and I just tend to run for something for a couple of days and see how it works out, or even a week. And if that doesn't work out, then it is what it is, and I change it up, and who knows, maybe they'll bring back the old ones. I'm looking forward to it. If they do, we don't really know. Maybe they'll create new massive ones that have multiple aspects to them. We don't know. We have to see. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. If you like the video, it's much appreciated, and if you want more videos like this, as I said, don't forget to like the video, and please subscribe. It's much appreciated. I'll see you guys later for more GRP discussion. Everyone take care.